until it says we're live. All right, and what is going on, everybody? It's Nick Curcio from PickSwap Media. Haven't been on the channel in a while, but I'm here with Sean Barnard and Mitch Kofsky. So how's everybody doing tonight?
Yeah, fresh off a nice Phillies loss, so digesting a little bit. But I guess time to turn the page and be ready for the best part of the season, which is, of course, watching our Philadelphia 76ers play basketball. So on to bigger and better, I guess.
Yeah. And as for me, I'm doing pretty good. I predicted the Phillies get knocked out in the first round by the All-Star break. So I'm like, I'm fine. I knew this was happening. So let's talk Sixers.
Yeah, man, I was actually fortunate enough to be in attendance at that Sixers preseason game the other night versus the New Zealand Breakers. I've never seen anything like it. That was, I don't even know if I want to say that was a good game to be at. It was almost like a bad game to be at because it was over in the first quarter. But it was cool. Yeah, but it was cool to watch a lot of guys like Ricky Council. Just got to see McCain and Justin Edwards and all those guys for the first time play, which I thought was super cool because, you know, once the regular season comes around, we're not going to see those guys play as many minutes. I think Ricky Council logged almost 30 minutes the other night, which, I mean, it was awesome. But come the regular season, we're lucky if we get to see him at all. So it was super cool. So we're going to go down the list from the top to the bottom of the roster and give our player predictions and expectations and just kind of our thoughts on what to expect come this season. So we'll start at the top with the big fella, Joel Embiid. So Sean, we'll start with you. Where do you want to start with Joel Embiid? Should we talk about how many games we think he should play?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my expectation for Joel Embiid, I think in a lot of people's eyes would be considered a step back, but I think it's a step forward for the greater good. That I think the Sixers should approach it with the concept and the game plan that this dude is not reaching 65 games. This dude is not going to be in the MVP race. This is not a guy we're pushing to play back-to-backs or make these type of decisions. I also would like to see Joel Embiid regress a little bit as a scorer. Let's grow as a playmaker. Let's be more of a pass-first guy. Be more of the hub to the offense, a guy distributing for others. Lean on Paul George. Lean on Tyrese Maxey, that you have these new look pieces. Let's take advantage. So a step forward as far as team basketball. I think it won't show in his statistics that I do think he's going to be a significant step backward next year. But he is closer to, I'm looking to see kind of a 26 point per game, 13 rebound and 7 assist type guy. That's the version of Joel Embiid I would like to see. And as an added bonus, I'll throw in, let's lock in full time on the defensive end of the floor a little bit. You're capable of being the best defender in the NBA when you want to be. I understand you got a ton on your plate, but a couple more moments where he's locked in there for me.
Yeah, I will say, I want to bring this up real quick while we're talking about Embiid, and then Mitch, I'll leave it to you. But Sean, you've mentioned this before, and I want to bring it up real quick. What do you think I'm going to say?
As far as the injuries you talked about?
Just in general, how they should manage Embiid.
Go for it. Where are you getting at here?
I don't think this will happen, but if I was working in the front office for the Sixers, or if I was in the medical staff, if I had some sort of say, I would only play Embiid in home games. I really think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I have floated that out there. I'm very much in favor of that. I don't think the Sixers will ultimately pull the trigger on that one, but I'm in favor if that's the plan.
I 100% agree. Mitch, what do you think about that? Yes, Paul Reed's fanboy. Yep, I'm here. Good to see everybody.
Yeah, but for me, I don't think they're going to do that because of his contract and the extension he's got. They want him to compete in every game possible. Back-to-back games, it's not going to happen. You know, he's going to take one game on, one game off, so there's that. I kind of want to see him focus more on the rebounding, especially the fact with Caleb Martin right there, right next to him. Now, if Yabusele is there and he can get the rebounds, then I'm like, okay, you don't have to work hard as much. And then just worried about the fouling. I mean, not the fouling, the falling, the flopping, all that. Please just stay healthy. That's all I'm caring about is his health.
Yeah, that's what it's going to come down to. No, I seriously think there's a lot of truth. You should only play Embiid in home games, but I don't think it's going to happen. So we'll move on now to Tyrese Maxey, which in my opinion, I think Maxey will be the leading scorer on this team this year.
Wow.
I think he's going to score them. I really do think he's going to score the most points per game for our team. I think I agree with you, Sean. Embiid will take a step back and play more of a defensive role, and I think Paul George will be the third leading scorer. I put Embiid probably around the 22, 23 points per game mark. I think Maxey is a lot closer to 30, maybe like 28, 29. Paul George, a little under 20, maybe 19, 20 around. That'd be my early prediction.
Yeah, I don't think I can see Embiid going below 25 or 26 points per game. I still think I'll be up at that range. I think Paul George cracks 22, over 20 points per game as well. But I do think Maxey still takes a leap forward. I think he was 25.9 points per game last year, somewhere right around there. I could see him squeaking out another point or two out of that. Maybe if he's in that like 28 point per game type range, I could see him being kind of equal to Joel as far as the point per game output and going in that range. I would like to see a little more. I guess I expect his 3-point percentage to climb this year. He was top 5 in the league for 2 seasons. Took a little bit of a step back last year at 37%, where he really had to generate more offense. It wasn't really a critique of Maxey. Just had more on his plate, and when that stretch in which Joel was out, obviously the shots become a little more difficult when the defense is keyed on you. So it did drop because of that, especially with the addition of Paul George. I expect that to grow. I also would love to see him grow as a playmaker a little bit this year. That there's still not like a true point guard on this roster. I guess Kyle Lowry is kind of the guy there, but as far as the starters as a whole, so if Maxey can fill that type of true point guard role, I think it'd be a great thing for the team. I know we're throwing a lot on his plate, but ultimately he's gotten better every step of the way, and I expect no different this season.
Yeah, I still don't view him as a point guard, but Mitch, what are your thoughts on Maxey?
I was just going to bring up the playmaking, man. I was going to bring that up because you have Paul George, who's mostly going to be off to the side. You got Caleb Martin, who's going to be off to the side. So they're going to be open when everyone's crowding Embiid. So you got to get that pass off. And if he's with the second unit, he's going to take off, man. I feel like he's going to go to at least 26 points, 27 points per game. So that way he can be in the running for people are going to have him as MVP in like the top 5, top 10. I don't see him going that far up, but his 3-point shooting has gotten tremendously better. So it's what I've seen from the last game and his workouts. So 3-point shooting and playmaking for me.
I expect him to only get better. I mean, he's only added something to his game every season. So why would I think otherwise at this point?
Yeah.
He's just continues to amaze me. I think, where do you think he would go now if he was getting drafted now? Because what was he, 21, right?
21. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think he would go now in the draft?
I think that was Cade Cunningham was one that draft, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So, that sounds right, yeah.
I think,
Cade, yeah.
He'd certainly be top 5, no doubt about that. Definitely top 3, I probably think. I think you could make the case that he should be the 1 pick in that draft. I think I'm still a Cade Cunningham believer and think Detroit's just been a mess and he'll ultimately figure it out. He's been really good every time I've tuned in and watched him. I think I would throw Maxey at 2 there. Probably my outlook.
I would probably still give the nod to Cade as well, but I don't think there's a huge gap. It really could go either way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For me, I got him between the 2 and 5. I got him through that top 5 range for sure.
Okay, we got my guy Philly Halftime in the chat right now saying he thinks there's too much hype on Ricky Council. We will get to that halftime because I have a lot I want to say on Ricky Council. We also have Melo in here. He was 2020 with Anthony Edwards, LaMelo, Halliburton, and Bane. Oh, okay. So which draft class was Cade? 21?
Yeah, I'm gonna look it up. Year before, probably.
I think it had to be 21 then.
Okay, yeah, I probably wouldn't. No, I'm not putting Maxey above Anthony Edwards, but I think there's a case that you could say he's better than Halliburton.
Yeah, James Wiseman, the 2 pick there. Patrick Williams, the 4. Isaiah Okoro at 5. He's jumping a lot of these guys. There's no doubt about it. I think the Halliburton case is interesting. I think that's probably pretty split. I think if you were to poll general managers, that probably would be pretty split around the NBA. I personally lean Maxey because I think he's more versatile in the ways that you can use him. I think Halliburton's pretty specific, and you have to kind of be playing around him. Terrific player, both great players. So I think I still throw Maxey at number 2, maybe number 3 for that. I can hear out the Halliburton case, but I lean Maxey.
Yeah. I would too, yeah. All right, Mitch, let's hear your thoughts on Paul George, the latest and greatest addition to the team.
At first, I wasn't like too hype because of his injury history. Like
I wasn't either, I'll be honest. I still to this day I'm a little more excited about Caleb Martin, I can't lie.
Yeah, but with the Paul George, he got in like 30 some odd injuries since 2014. So for me, I'm keeping that in the back of my head, but this is a perfect fit for Paul George. He doesn't have to do too much. He doesn't have to do too little. He's just there. He's getting up there in his career. So he's going to average, I'd say, like 18 to 20 points per game, especially with that 3-point shooting. And then he can mentor all the younger guys. Ricky Council, he can mentor all those young guys. So I like where Paul George is at.
Yeah, I think you guys are still underselling Paul George a little bit. This dude was an all-star last year. This dude's been a 9-time all-star. This guy's been the best player on teams that have gone further than the Sixers team has ever gone. And for the Paul George consideration here, at least in the Joel Embiid era I'm speaking about here, but at least for this specific team, he just has to be Paul George. That I think the critiques of him apply when he's a number 1 or a number 2 option. When you're just a guy who shoots 41.3% from 3 like he did last year, 45% from the corner last year, you're going to be feeding off looks with Joel Embiid's gravity, and still a guy that like is a wildly better defender than a guy like Tobias Harris. No, he's not the Paul George that he once was, but this guy that's a perfect basketball fit for this team. I love the fit as far as a true guard in Tyrese Maxey, a true wing in Paul George, and a true big man in Joel Embiid. I think the Sixers absolutely have the best big three in the NBA, and I'm very excited for what he brings to this team. I also respect him kind of turning a page in his own personal journey where I don't have to be the guy anymore. I don't need a team built around me. He seems really willing to fit into what the Sixers have got going on, and I've been really impressed by everything that he's spoken outwardly thus far.
I think no matter how you look at it, whether you think Maxey's the one or Embiid's the one, or I think Paul George is the 3.
Yeah.
He's the 3rd option on this team. Maybe on some nights, like if Embiid's out, Paul George will be the number 2, but I think
he gets that, though. Like, I think he understands that, which I think is important.
No, yeah, I think he's accepted the fact that he can't do it by himself, and he's the 3rd option.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
We got Melo in here.
I like this comment.
I feel like Paul George might be a Phoenix Suns Mikal Bridges type player. He'll give you perimeter defense and shoot some threes. He just got to play his role. Yeah, that's it, man. He's just got to play his role. I've been harping on the perimeter defense for the longest time. Sean will tell you. We need a guy that can just lock it down because, Embiid doesn't like to guard the 3. So I think if Paul George is a willing defender, sky's the limit for the Sixers team. Let's move on now to who, in my opinion, is the 4th best player on this team, Caleb Martin. Yeah. Mitch, let's hear your thoughts.
So Caleb Martin, in my opinion, he's the best perimeter defender that we got on his team. So if you have Paul George on the wing, same with Caleb Martin, that's going to be tough to get past. And you have Joel Embiid down low. So I really like that move. It steals a lot from the Miami Heat because against the Boston Celtics, he was torching them left and right. So I like that in that aspect. But for me, the Caleb Martin, it's the 3-point shooting. Can he be as consistent as he was with Miami? That's the only thing I got to say. So for me, it's that.
Yeah, he's a streaky shooter, so we'll have to live with our ups and downs with that. But I do think he's a guy that does the little things the way this team needs. The perimeter defense is going to be night and day different with him on the floor, and I'm very excited about that. He's also a guy who likes the challenge, that wants to play opponent's best players, wants to be the guy guarding superstars, which I think is important. And the Sixers haven't really had a guy like that. I guess Ben Simmons in his prime days are really the guy that you can think of that would take on those type of tasks. So I expect Martin to step into that type of role. I do think he's going to hit some big-time buckets for this team. I do think he's going to be a guy that's a fan favorite very rapidly, that he will be a guy that attracts Philadelphia. And ultimately, I just want him to be like a really good connector within the starting lineup. That's not going to be every game in which it's a Caleb Martin star performance, but there will be the nights where he matters. As long as he can just do the nitty-gritty, the grind work, the little things that this team needs, I'm totally content with what he brings to it, and I expect exactly that to go down.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Caleb Martin. Let's not forget that he was, talked about for Eastern Conference Finals MVP. What was it? 3 years ago?
Yeah. Yep. Playoff riser. He's had his best moments when the light's the brightest.
Celtics killer. We need that.
Yeah.
If we can get there, we need that. I still worry about the Knicks, but if we can get there, we're going to need them. Here we got Melo chiming in again. I take Kelly Oubre over Caleb. He loves them both. They're both Hornets legends. That's exactly right. Or wait, did Caleb play there?
Yeah. I know Cody does currently. I'm not.
Did they both play there?
I'll fact check here.
Caleb did for like a little bit, I think. It was like earlier on in his career, I think. But but I love the Caleb Martin move. That's my favorite move of this offseason.
And spent his first 2 years with the Hornets. So shout out Charlotte.
Nice. There we go. All right, yeah. Next up will actually be Kelly Oubre. So I'm obviously thrilled to have him back. Halftime talks about it all the time, actually, Mitch. But he
Yeah.
always says how Oubre embodies what a Philadelphia athlete should be, and I 100% agree with that. Shout out halftime. He's 100% right. The grit it could be. Oubre was playing his heart out the other night, that preseason game that I was at, which meant absolutely nothing, but he was diving for loose balls, dunked on a couple guys. The energy that he brings every given night, you need that in order to be a successful basketball team. So thrilled to have Oubre back.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's funny that like the version of Kelly Oubre that I think we were braced for is far from what we got. And it's very funny to me after a year, which I agree with, that he does act like a Philadelphia athlete. He is what we want. But that was not at all the guy that I was expecting to walk through these doors. That he's been a guy that has had frustrated teammates, who has burned out in multiple situations in the NBA already. I guess my fear here with Kelly Oubre is that he was on his best behavior in year one, and we see a little bit more of, let me try this heat check three. Let me try and do a little bit too much here. I want him to make sure he stays within his lane, does his thing. On the other side of things here, I do think that it's been very good for him to be playing winning basketball. That when you look at the course of his entire career, playing for teams with no disrespect, like the Hornets or the Wizards or the bad Warriors team during that random year, like he hasn't really had a structured situation in which he's played in. The Sixers have been the first time that's the case. So I think he benefited from that. I think he likes that, and I do hope that continues. But I do have a little bit in the back of my mind of fear of we might get a little bit too much Kelly Oubre at certain points in this season.
Yeah.
There are times he tries to do a little bit too much. You're not wrong. What do you think, Mitch? You go ahead to have
But
Oubre back?
I love the Kelly Oubre. Can he just not get hit by a car? That's just my thing. Can he just not get hit by a car? That's one. But two, here's the main question. Starting or coming off the bench? Because it's going to be rotating throughout some games. So I'm like, he's perfect for both sides. If you want him off the bench, give him that scoring spark, that's good. If you want him on that oh my God, I can't speak. For that starting lineup, you want him that scoring spark, that's perfect as well. But I'm asking you guys, off the bench or starting?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
go
go
ahead,
ahead,
Sean.
Nick.
Go ahead.
Okay, I lean towards the off the bench conversation as far
I
as
do
my
too,
personal
yeah.
preference there. I do think when there was the agreement made and when the contracts were negotiated, it was telling to me that the first Woj report referred to Kelly Oubre as the starting shooting guard on the Sixers there. I do think that there's a little bit of an understanding that he'll at least get first dibs at earning that opportunity there. And he has earned it for what he did last year, so I don't fully hate that. There is a world where I think, depending on how Gershon Yabusele looks when we see him against actual NBA talent, that I feel much better about him being the starting power forward and Oubre bring more of a six-man role. But ultimately, I'm totally cool with not having that concrete plan and playing around with things as the season actually kicks off.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to look at it. I still don't view Maxey as a point guard, but I mean, I know they're not going to start Reggie Jackson. I hope they wouldn't start Kyle Lowry. And what's Caleb Martin? 6'5"?
6'6.5" shoes on. He claimed it immediately.
I don't even view him as a power forward. Wasn't he the starting two guard for Miami Heat?
Yeah, he's played some power forward for them. I also think, like, in general, positions mean as little as they ever had from an NBA standpoint. That I think you look around the league, kind of conversation. There's a handful of guys that are true floor generals, but that's ultimately like it's a lot more of this kind of, I guess, fluid positions or positionless basketball. I think the Sixers are embracing that to an extent. I still think they keep more traditional positions by once again with kind of the guard, wing, and big man archetype, which is what they very much have with their trio here. So it's not something I'm super caught up in, and I do think like when the matchups dictate it, that they do have options with guys like you mentioned, with Kyle Lowry, with Yabusele, with other pieces that can come in and play. So I like kind of the flexibility that they do have.
Yeah, but you got to remember this, right? During the trade deadline, when that's coming up, we have KJ Martin's contract. We got the draft picks. So I really think we're going to trade KJ Martin and a draft pick for Dorian Finney-Smith from Brooklyn on the trade deadline. So if we can get that, there's just solid 4.
Yeah, I think he's automatically the 4.
Yeah, you got to go that route. You got it. So we just got to wait until the deadline for that.
Yeah, definitely. Now, there's a lot of ways you can look at it. I just view it like say we were to be matched up against, I don't know, the Nuggets, like you feel great about Caleb Martin on Aaron Gordon? Because I don't. I feel much better with Yabusele matching up with Aaron
Right.
Gordon.
I mean, to be honest, like for that exact comparison, if the Nuggets' offensive attack is for Aaron Gordon to be going at the Sixers, that's a win in my mind. That like if
That's true. That's true.
what we're living and dying with, like you can sign me up for that. So I hear you, but I think like you can kind of push and take in each of these, and every match will be a little different. But if the Nuggets are attacking with ISOs for Aaron Gordon on Caleb Martin or post ups with Aaron Gordon on Caleb Martin, I can live with that one.
That's fair. That's fair. All right, next up here, you guys can. I had it written down here. I had Andre Drummond as our next best player. What do you guys think about that?
That's fair. I like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Love
Fair.
Drummond. Very excited for him this year. My hot take for him is I want to see 35 plus games started for Andre Drummond, and this feeds directly into the Joel Embiid conversation here. We saw the corner three the other night in preseason. See him expand in the range a little bit.
That was on my side too. That was awesome. It was like right
cool.
in front of me.
Oh,
I
wow.
sat close. Yeah, it was
That's
awesome.
I think he's just super happy to be back in Philadelphia, which I think is very cool. I think he's going to be a big time vibes guy for this team, and he's going to be important to this team. That he's in many ways like the innings eater that they need to fill up the nights where Joel doesn't play, and ultimately just be really good at the true center roles. Grab rebounds, dominate the boards, play defense. That's pretty much all I'm hoping for Andre Drummond, and I think he'll bring a little bit more to the table than just that.
Yeah, no, he's a dog. You're right, Brian. He is 100% a dog. He is, in his opinion, the best rebounder in NBA history. I honestly don't think that's that big of a hot take. I think everyone's making a much bigger deal about that than is the case. He's definitely top five.
Yeah, you can make a case for sure. He's led the league in rebounds, I believe, 4 times. His numbers, as far as he's only got better as a rebounder since leaving Philadelphia. When you look at his rebounding percentages, which really impressed me when looking at those in Chicago. So I think he's another guy who's settled into who he is as a player and what his role can be on a contending team. That he knows maybe he's stretching himself a little bit too far if he's a true starter. He's done that dance in Detroit and for other teams there. That he's ready to help a winner, and he was real sad when he was traded the first time. So
I like it.
Yeah, I hope that he's here the whole season.
I think.
Yeah,
I think he will.
I think he will be.
Yeah, he's got to be. Because when you look at all the backup centers Joel Embiid has in the past, Andre Drummond was the best one that he's ever had.
Yeah.
So there's no way that we're going to let him go for nothing. Well, is it like a 2-year deal? 10 mil? Something like that?
Yeah.
So
correct.
I think Andre Drummond is just as perfect here as it is. Doesn't have to do too much. And we're not going to sink as we did in years past with Andre Drummond there. So I'm good with it.
Yeah, I'll miss Paul Reed. I hope he does well in Detroit. But, if you ask me straight up, Andre Drummond or Paul Reed, it's a no-brainer. You got to go with Andre Drummond. Next guy I have on the list is Gershon Yabusele, who, in my opinion, should be the starting power forward on this team.
Yeah, I mean, too early to crown him yet. That we've just seen him against the New Zealand Breakers, who isn't quite NBA level talent. I am a believer that it will translate. I was impressed with him the other night. The number one thing that stood out to me is like there's some genuine basketball feel in the way that he plays, that he can make connective passes. He can read the defense. And that was stuff that I was pretty keyed in on seeing. Like he had one dump off to KJ Martin as an assist. That was really impressive to me. That's more than just a traditional big man stuff, that he did a lot on the short roll, which is something that I wasn't really expecting in his game. So I'm very excited about what he can bring to the table. He also played as the backup center for his first time in the game. I think it's going to be interesting to note how they use him as far as a 5, as a power forward, if they trust him to do these type of things. I know the shot's going to dictate a lot of that, but the shots look pretty good by my eyes and seems to be translating in practice. You got to make him earn it, but I think there's absolutely a world where he does become the starting power forward. And I like that this is another guy who has plus size, has plus athleticism, and especially when you're kind of looking at the matchups around the conference, it's a good big body to have to be able to throw at people. So I think he's going to be a huge X factor on this team and a guy that I would love to make that push for that power forwarding spot as long as he earns it.
Yeah, we'll give our thoughts on Adem Bona a little bit later, but I think the nights that Embiid is out, I honestly see Yabusele. I mean, Drummond will most likely be the starting 5, but I honestly think I see Yabusele playing the backup 5 position those nights Embiid is not out. I think he's more of a wing than a center, but I think he is also big enough and skilled enough where he can play the 5. He can space the floor too. He's a good shooter. I was surprised. I think he hit 2 threes the other night.
Yep. He did not miss a shot.
Yeah, he's perfect from the field. And that's been the biggest thing. Like, if you watch his NBA tape from his first time in the league, he was very clearly like a traditional big man, that he was a little heavier. He was less athletic. He didn't have the jump shot as much as he does now. He's a very different player this go around, that he is more perimeter oriented, more comfortable and effective as a shooter on the perimeter, and a guy who's just got a little more as far as putting the ball on the ground, attacking closeouts, things like that. So I think he's motivated by his second attempt at the NBA. It's clear he's hungry, and he's a guy who has the talent. We all saw what he did at the Olympics. So happy he's getting an opportunity, happy it is in Philadelphia, and I'm very excited to see what he plays himself into.
Yeah,
it's actually kind of cool that Daryl Morey came out and said that he's been trying to get Yabusele for the last couple of years. So the fact that he actually stayed consistent and got him after this Olympic run, so I power to Daryl Morey on that one. Like, he stayed consistent, he stayed power hungry, and that's the guy he wanted. So diamond in the rough, I guess.
Celtics, right?
Yeah, originally his first NBA go around. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and then he's been with Real Madrid.
Yeah, Real Madrid, which is a pretty solid overseas club. Like, they play some real deal talent in the EuroLeague and a couple other over in Spain. So not like he was playing zeros out there.
Yeah, I mean, I saw enough of him in the Olympics where I was like, this dude can play. And then when they signed him, I was thrilled because besides, I would say number one in terms of weaknesses the past however many years has been the perimeter defense. But I'd say the number two is rebounding, and he's definitely going to help with a lot of that. Next, my guy Reggie Jackson. I am so stoked to have Reggie Jackson on the team. Do I think he's going to play a lot? To be determined. I honestly have no idea. I think it's going to be whoever's got it going between him and Kyle Lowry. I probably lean towards Kyle Lowry playing more because look who the head coach is. But if you were to ask me who has more left in the tank, I would go with Reggie Jackson. What do you think, Mitch?
Obviously, I would go with Reggie Jackson more because of the scoring ability. He's like the Cameron Payne of last year. So if he can just keep on being that scoring punch, along with like Kelly Oubre, if he comes off the bench, that could be like a 10 and 12 punch right there off the bench, which I'm fond of. But Kyle Lowry, on the other hand, that's more like a veteran leadership with the playmaking. You saw what Yabusele was doing with Kyle Lowry doing the pick and roll. So that's why Kyle Lowry is there with Yabusele. So I love Reggie Jackson. I do. I think that was a really good move, and we'll see where it goes from here.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Reggie Jackson, have been throughout the entirety of career. He's been a guy that's been fun to watch from afar for me. I will say I do think his best years are behind him, and this is a little bit of the tail end of it for him. I still think he has something to provide. My kind of expectations is I want there to be 2 games this season in which it's the Reggie Jackson game, in which he is the spark off the bench. He gets hot, firing threes, hitting big shots, doing his little hop dance down the floor. I want to see all of that. So give it to me a couple occasions where he is truly let free. I do think that will happen over the 82 game sample size where there's obviously injuries, rotations get mixed up, all these type of things. But I think when it is kind of the ultimate cruncher, we're talking about the playoff rotation. I don't know if I see Reggie Jackson fully cracking that, but he is a guy that I think will be valuable at points in the regular season.
They go, 10 deep in the regular season and then 8 in the playoffs usually?
Sometimes deeper than that regular season too, is there will be like 12 game or things like that. And especially with injuries, like there'll be nights where, of course, the Joel night days off or a random 2-week injury for Maxey or whatever the case may be, that like there'll be opportunities.
Yeah. No, I'm thrilled to have Reggie Jackson. I also think nights that Paul George may sit out, maybe even Maxey. Not that I think Maxey's going to miss a lot of games, but yeah, like you said, I can just see it now. A game in January against the Charlotte Hornets. Reggie Jackson dropping 30 points.
Fine with me. Yeah,
I'm good with that, man. As long as we get the dub and the bench is contributing, take my money. That's all I'm saying. Take my money on that.
There you go. So next we'll go with Kyle Lowry. I put Kyle Lowry one spot behind Reggie Jackson. You could argue they're interchangeable. I personally think Reggie Jackson has more left in the tank. I know a lot of people would disagree with me on that, but what do you think of Kyle Lowry? What are your expectations for him this year, Sean?
Yeah, so as far as the comparison here, like Reggie and Kyle are very different style of players. That Reggie much more of a score first guy. Kyle is much more of like a true point guard that he will play make for others. Does a lot of the little things as far as taking charges, setting up the defense, calling out plays. That's stuff that I do think is important on the Sixers team, and I think that like my takeaway from last year has always been both these things can be true, that Kyle Lowry can still provide positive minutes on a championship contender. And the role for him last year was too large. He was playing 30 plus minutes per game in the playoffs. That is not what can happen.
Can't happen.
No, that cannot. I'm with you there. But there is a spot for him to at least add some minutes. I think there will be lineups where it's best served to play both Maxey and Paul George off ball, where you want a guy like Lowry being the playmaker, running the show, calling out plays, doing all those type of things. There's going to be a lot of Kyle Lowry off nights as well, as he's another guy who's very much in the twilight years of his career. I think he's probably going to immediately hop the other side of the line and end up a coach following this. So I think he's kind of already getting started with that in a way. So I guess there will be nights. I think he'll be a guy kind of the opposite of Reggie Jackson to me that I think becomes more important come playoff time than regular season, that those 10-minute pushes that I think he will play in the playoffs will matter. But ultimately, he's a guy that's there to be a leader, there to teach things, there to show how the offense should be run, and ultimately still will make his impact felt on certain nights. So I'm happy Kyle's back.
Yeah, definitely. Mitch, I know you're not a big Kyle Lowry guy either. Also, shout out Jerry in the chat. Good to see you in here, dude. I'm 100% with you. Caleb Martin is the man, and he's probably my favorite addition to the team this year. I got to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Now, the thing with Kyle Lowry is that with him in the playoffs last year, that was disgrace, that was ugly. The second game out of bounds, don't get me into that. But the thing with Kyle Lowry I'm just really fond of is him mentoring Jaron McCain, him mentoring the younger guys. I'm a huge Jaron McCain fan. I've been watching him since junior year of high school. So I'm telling you guys, Jaron McCain with Kyle Lowry here, sky's the limit. Sky's the limit for Jaron McCain with Kyle Lowry here. So I'm just going to leave it at that.
And by the way, McCain's been very open about that as well, talking about how Lowry's been a guy that he's watched his entire life, like as a small guard, some traits in the way they play that he has picked up on. So it is cool that there is that direct kind of mentorship role there.
I would argue, well, Jeff Doughton Jr., but besides Jeff Doughton, and he's on a two-way anyway, so I guess, yeah, I would say Kyle Lowry is the only true point guard on the roster. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Next up, another guard, but this is a shooting guard, Eric Gordon.
Yeah, I think Eric Gordon's role on this team is going to be a lot bigger than people realize. That I think there will be games where he starts. I think there will be games where he's playing 30-plus minutes, a significant amount of them, to be perfectly honest. That I think that he's brought in, the guy still has something in the tank. That every time I watched him with the Suns last year, I was impressed with. And particularly in the standpoint that he played stylistically different than we'd seen him for most of his career. In general, this is a guy that is a sit in the corner and launch three-pointers type of guy. Something that I particularly like about Eric Gordon is he's not a toe on the line three-point shooter type guy. He'll shoot from 5 feet back of the arc. He'll shoot from a couple steps from beyond the line there. That's stuff that is important for spacing the floor. He hit one in preseason, which he was 4 or 5 feet back from the three-point arc there. I like that. They have not had a lot of guys to do that. Isaiah Joe, really the last one that pops to mind there. But Eric Gordon is going to be a guy that lets it fly from deep. He will have his moments where he's knocking down 4 or 5 threes in a game. So I think Eric Gordon has been probably the signing that I'll say has flown the most under the radar. I think people will be surprised with how large his role is.
Yeah, Mitch, I think me and you both feel the same way about Eric Gordon. I mean, I love the optimism, Sean, but I don't feel great about Eric Gordon. What about you, Mitch?
Here's the thing with Eric Gordon, right? Great shooter. It's what we needed. Daryl Morey needed to get him to be on this team. We all know that. It's just what Phoenix Suns fans are telling me. Don't have him dribble way too much because I'm telling you, that will be taken right away from him. So that's the only thing I'm afraid of. If he can do more catch and shoot, I'm okay with that. Like off screens, pick and pop, whatever. I'm good with that. Let Eric Gordon shoot off catch and shoot. That's good for me.
Yeah, and I feel like at times he tries to do too much.
Yeah, I think he kind of had to in a sense with that Suns team last year. Like when you talk about like not having positions or not having like a clear responsibilities, that was that team that was really an issue with. And I thought Gordon was a guy, it impressed me from the standpoint I haven't really seen him do that kind of stuff before. So it was kind of nice to see that he can do some of these things. He's certainly not going to be an expert attacking closeouts and finishing around the rim, but that was still a dude that started 24 games out of the 68 that he played in last year, averaged 11 points per game, still shot 37.8% from three on 5.8 attempts per game, shot 42.3% from three the year before. I'm still pretty optimistic about what he's got. And again, like 35 years old is old, but it's still a guy that like showed something at the NBA level. So I think Eric Gordon's going to be in the mix at the minimum.
You like that, Mitch?
Bruh, really? We got to do this now?
Double C.
Yeah. I don't know how to feel about Eric Gordon to be. I just think his best days are behind him. I loved him on that Rockets team, though. I got to be honest. Like those that what was he there 4 or 5 years? Those were the best. That was his prime, I would
Yeah.
say.
Just another mentorship for these young guys. That's it. Another veteran leadership for Jared McCain to fix a jump shot. Maybe he can actually help Andre Drummond with the free throw shot. Like stuff like that, you know? That's what not Jared McCain, Eric Gordon's mainly here for.
Yeah, no, definitely, man. I hope he proves me wrong and he makes an impact on this team, but I just don't know. Next up, I would think this guy is. I would think they brought him back as a trade piece. KJ Martin.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I'll also mention, like, I think this year's roster is better equipped to allow KJ Martin to have a role than last year's. That I do think there's some opportunity for him as a small ball five in some situations. I think they're going to try and utilize him. A lot of that, like, off the short roll type plays is where I see him at his best as well, where you give him the ball, sets a screen, rolls, kind of feeding him around that elbow or free throw line, and then it's either attack the basket or you can make a pass out of that. He can do that kind of stuff. I think he's still 23 years old. Like, I'm not ready to count out that this dude can't be a positive NBA player. It's been kind of a tough fit here in Philadelphia. He's also put in a ton of work with a shooting coach this offseason, which I'm at least a little optimistic about. But we'll see how it all shakes out. Not a guy that I think will ultimately be here in the second half.
Oh, you're muted.
Okay, while Sean's fixing that, I'll give my thoughts on KJ Martin. He's always been one of those players for me where, towards the end of the bench, if you were to ask me to pick between KJ Martin or Ricky Council IV, it's a no-brainer for me. I'm taking Ricky Council IV, just what he brings you on every given night. Neither of them are great shooters in general. That's not what they do. They're out there to really cause havoc, and their athleticism is what makes them playable at all. Yeah, I hear what you're saying about KJ Martin, but I just think now, like last year, I understood why he played, but I think this team's like honestly too deep now, where I don't even know if he deserves minutes. Like,
it's a good problem to have.
No, it's definitely a good problem to have. Yeah.
Here's the thing with KJ Martin, right? Like I said before, I think he might get traded at the deadline. So this is all or nothing. When his number gets called, he's got to answer it. Like he's got to step up to the occasion. If they need him to get a certain amount of points and just be there for the certain play types, he's got to do it, man. He's got to do everything that he's told in order to keep his spot.
Yeah, I hope all these guys. I don't root for anyone to do bad. Like I would love to see him do well and not be traded. I hope he takes that next step, and I hope everyone plays to their peak, and we don't trade anybody at the deadline. I hope we're the number 1 seed, and the team is. I obviously hope for the best, but I don't know, man. Next up is Ricky Council IV. I think this guy has proven to everybody that he's too good to be in the G League now. I mean, he was dropping 25, 30 points in the G League every game he played down there in Delaware. If you're able to score that many points in the G League, I mean, I would think you'd be able to give us 8 to 10 points a night with the big guns now. Like,
The weird thing about Ricky Council and kind of what I'm looking for this year is he's a good basketball player. There's no doubt about that. But it's always interesting players like him when you're trying to make the leap from a G League guy where you're the guy, where you're asked to do all this offensive production, be the engine of the offense, to when you're in the NBA role, that's really never going to be Ricky Council IV's role. That he is going to be a complementary player. He is going to be a guy as more of a role player type kind of vibe to him. You got to figure out how to impact game in terms of winning in those areas. That I'd like to see some growth as a defender. I would love to see him really kind of commit to rebounding as kind of a lane there. If he can be a little bit more of a power forward like player. He's an incredibly good slasher, very good free throw rate, gets the line a ton, but those like complementary skill sets of catch and shoot threes, playing defense, guarding on the perimeter, that's the stuff that I'd really like to see him take a leap in his development at. So I love Ricky. I do hope he's absolutely in this rotation here. But I do think he needs to grow as far as learning those complementary skill sets and the role player type things to get good at, rather than just being a good basketball player, which is kind of what he is right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
And
just tired of the Sixers always trading away their young talent. Look at
Yeah.
Isaiah Joe, Charles Bassey, Haywood Highsmith. You can go down the list of all these guys that have turned themselves into really good NBA players. I mean, unless someone becomes available that's like a no-brainer, you have to trade for him if he's available. Like, I would do everything possible to keep Ricky Council because I really think he's going to only continue to get better. And I think both him and Maxey are the future of this Sixers team post Embiid.
I hope so.
Yeah.
That's high praise for Ricky Council. I don't know if I'm ready to throw him into that quite
I'm
conversation yet, but I do like him. Do hope he's around. I think it's cool. Him and Maxey are tight for sure.
Yeah. And as for me, like I said before, months ago, I forget when, but it comes down to the coaching. When is he going to give opportunities to Ricky Council? Like, if they're up by like 10 or 15, throw Ricky Council in there, man. Give him some big time moments. Get his hype up. Let people see what he can do, and then so on and so forth. It comes down to the coaching for me when it comes to Ricky Council.
He single-handedly was the difference in that game last year against the Spurs.
Yes.
Yeah, that was his peak moment last year for sure.
That's his best NBA game, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, we don't win that game without Ricky doing what he did. Jerry also in the chat talking about Springer. That's another guy you can add to the list. Super nice guy, by the way. I got to meet him. Awesome dude. Obviously wish he was still on the roster, but it's just one of those things. The Sixers love to give up young talent. Hopefully that starts to change and we actually keep our young talent and develop them.
Here's the thing about Jared Springer, or Jaden Springer, sorry. Here's the thing. I don't think he's that good offensively. I think he's more a defensively kind of guy. And for what Boston needed, he doesn't have to play. For us, he was just trying to find his role, trying to find a spot. So for me, it's just like, yeah, let him go to Boston. We got what, a second round pick out of it or something?
Yeah. Second round.
So yeah, to me, he's not a good offensive player. He can dunk. He's very athletic. Defensively, he can do all that. I just don't think he's a good offensive player.
I wanted him to be like what Matisse Thybulle was supposed to be for us and just knock down that, like a 3-and-D wing and just be able to knock down that 3-point shot consistently. But he was never given the opportunity. I think he's a much better, at least from what I've seen in the G League and even a little bit in a small sample size with the Celtics. I think he's a better 3-point shooter than Thybulle.
I mean, the unfortunate reality for guys of that archetype of player is like your career is basically entirely decided for what your 3-point percentage is. That you can find a million guys who are rugged defenders in the perimeter, the Jaden Springers, the Thybulles, the guys like that. But if teams are just going to ignore you on the offensive end, there's really not a place for you in the NBA. And I think that's kind of the barrel the Sixers were staring down, which they decided in the calculation that they don't see Springer making that type of leap. Obviously, we saw how the Matisse Thybulle era went, and he's not a guy that can impact winning in the playoffs because of those same reasons. So I think that's really where the decision made. And it's unfortunate because this is not a small umbrella that it's just a guy like Springer that it happens. There's a lot of guys across the league that unfortunately fall in that category.
Ben Simmons.
Sure.
He's still there.
Yeah. It just frustrates me because they gave him up for really nothing.
Yeah.
Draft pick to the Celtics or we got a draft pick from the Celtics in return?
Yeah, it was a salary type rumor. I believe making a roster spot is really what it was creating thing. You basically had to dump a guy. So it's not great management of talent, I would say. Same thing with like the Isaiah Joe conversation, which the focus was ducking the luxury tax there. It doesn't feel great to see those things happen, but those are kind of the inner workings and the tough decisions the organizations have to make.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's talk about another guy who will probably spend most of his time with the Bluecoats this year. But I think with injuries, we could see some Jeff Doughton minutes again.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see a lot of them. I do think I would say I think it's likely that by the end of the season, he's probably upgraded to a standard contract. That's what happened last year. There's clearly a trust in Nick Nurse or a close relationship between the two of them there. I like Jeff Doughton. He's just really solid to me. You know exactly what you're getting. He's a guy that's just going to make the right decisions, do the basic basketball things, can shoot just fine. So I think it's a good addition as far as a two-way option there and a guy that will stick around. His voice is quite funny also. But ultimately, don't think we'll see a ton of him in the actual Sixers uniform this year.
I did like what I saw from him in those couple games last year. Like I do like Jeff Doughton. I'm glad to have him back, and I think he's great for a lot of these younger guys that we're going to talk about shortly, as like a veteran guy, not only on the Sixers roster, but even down in Delaware. Mitch, what do you think of Jeff Dowden?
I mean, how long has he been in the league? It feels like a couple years, but he's been like he's been in the league, what, 2-3 years, give or take? And
Longer
then
than that, I believe. He's older than you think he is. He's like 27, I think.
he's like
Yeah,
27, yeah.
He like just makes the cutoff for
Yeah.
like the G League, doesn't he? Or for like a two-way contract. I remember reading something about that.
Yeah, this is the final year he's eligible for a two-way contract.
Okay.
Well, there you go then.
Yeah.
There you go then.
This is probably his last year with the Sixers. I'll say that much. If he is going to get another opportunity, I don't think it's here.
We'll see. I mean, he's playing for veterans minimums from here on out, or some sort of real contract, because it's not the option anymore with the two-way. But Nurse likes him, so I'm not entirely shutting the door there.
That's true. He did play for him in Toronto for a couple years there. Next up, I think both of these guys will most likely spend a lot of time in the G League. I guess we can just group them together because they were the same draft class. Jared McCain and Adem Bona.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'll start with I'm trying to find Screaming. Here we go. Shout out Screaming Jerry Lee's comment for I did drop a video on Sixers Digest talking about this a little bit. I do think that there's a chance that he's traded by the Sixers this year. And the reason that I say that, I'm not in favor of it, but I think for starters, they've been showcasing this dude like a ton. And I understand he is like a social media guy, that he has the TikTok, all those type of things. But it's been like a little bit weird to me how forward facing he's been for a guy who hasn't played a game in a Sixers uniform yet. And I also think like when you flash back to when this actual decision was made, the draft was before free agency. So this is before it was even known that Paul George was coming to Philadelphia. So I think part of the calculations by Daryl Morey in making that selection, and Dalton Connect's the obvious guy that the choice was sort of between here. Dalton Connect's the guy that would have made much more sense for a Sixers roster that's meant to compete right now. But Jared McCain is a guy who makes a lot more sense on a wider variety of teams. So I do think as we have this conversation for what is this missing piece, I think there's a fairly likely chance that Daryl Morey is at least having conversations about a Jared McCain and KJ Martin type package to be traded out. I do hope that's not the case. I do really like him as both a basketball player and a human being. That he was awesome. I got a chance to interview him in Las Vegas at Summer League. Was great then. I think he's frankly a real deal elite shooter that I would like to have around for a while. But ultimately, I do think that there's a real world where we're talking about a couple months down the line that he could be wearing a different uniform. And I think that was factored in the decision to draft him in the first place. So I hope I'm wrong there, but I do think there will at least be conversations to be had.
I think you made a good point about him being showcased way too much, because when you look at his TikTok following, his social media presence, the Sixers social media platforms have been blowing up like crazy. They've been skyrocketing. So with that being said, that is a strong case to be had. I just don't want it to be I just don't want it to happen, man. I just don't. This is a guy I've been watching for years, and now he's on my team. So
I agree. I love him. I hope it doesn't happen, but I do think that's in Morey's calculation and something that you can never rule out with Daryl. So we'll see.
He did impress me the other night at that preseason game. I can't lie. That one no dip 3-pointer reminded me of Nico Batum.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was super impressive, especially a guy at his size that he's able to do that is crazy. I just didn't understand it from Ross, just a decision making. I'm not sure what the word I want to use is, but if we're going all in to win a championship, why are we taking a guy that needs time to develop? Dalton Connect was a top 5 projected pick in that draft. I just don't understand why we didn't take Dalton Connect. Why?
Yeah, I mean,
did they
that's
see
kind
in
of
Jared
part
McCain?
of what brought me. Yeah, I think part of it's what brought me to the potential trade conversation. I also the dude's a good basketball player. The dude can shoot the lights out, was a good defender in college, and even at his size, I think projects pretty well. He's really strong, right from day one. Will be able to attack bodies when he's going in the paint and things like that. I think he's going to be good, and it's not going to be immediately. But at 19 years old, I think he just turned 20 now. But when you flash forward to him at age 24 or age 25, I think that's a high impact NBA player right there. So I do understand drafting him. I do hope that they show a little bit of patience because you got to do everything. You got to always have the long view as well and have those guys next up. You look at good organizations like the Boston Celtics, who tend to always have that next guy developing, ready to step into the next role. It's important to do that. And I think McCain's sort of in that pipeline. To the Sixers' credit, they've done a much better job of recently building up this pipeline to having those types of names. So I understand it, even if it did kind of ruffle a few feathers. And I do hope they don't give up on this kid.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's just if they're really in win now mode, I just don't understand why they didn't go with a guy who's ready now rather than someone who is going to take a couple more years to develop. But I mean, like I said before, I hope all these guys play up to their expectations and play at their absolute best because I want to see this Sixers team do well this year, 100%.
Yep.
As for Adembona, I think he'll spend most of his time with the G League. I don't see maybe nights that Embiid's out, he may get a nod, but I just see I see Drummond and then I see Yabusele playing the backup 5 on those nights. I can't see a world where Bona's playing a lot of minutes.
I think we'll see some of it in the non-Embiid games. Like the guy has a motor that immediately translates and he works his tail off every second he's on the court. A guy who seems to have impressed a decent bit in training camp. He just does the basic center things that he's going to screen, he's going to roll, he's going to rebound, and he's going to block shots. That's who Adembona is as a basketball player. I like guys that are incredibly comfortable with their identity as a player. I like guys that know their role, that know exactly what they're good at and pretty much stick to that. That's basically what I expect from him, not just in the short term, but kind of in the future of his career. That I think he's cut from that Clint Capella type mold of center that's just going to do the basic center skills. And there's always going to be a place for that. So welcome to Philadelphia. And I do think in the long run, that is the future, the Joel Embiid backup of the future. So excited to have him here.
I hope you're right, by the way, Brian. I hope it's I honestly would rather it be a little under 50 games played. He's got the MVP. Just stay healthy for the playoffs, man.
Right.
What do you think of Bona, Mitch?
Now, when I think of Adembona, it's a shot blocking right away. Like he can get, I think he got 5 blocks in a summer league game or something like that.
Yeah.
Like this guy, it's what we needed when we protect the rim. That's not Joel Embiid's strong suit. I don't even think that's Yabusele's strong suit. Andre Drummond, he could do that, but he's more of a rebounder type of guy. So when you look at Adembona and you get him as an elite shot blocker in a couple years, then you're good. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
I think that's his best quality, his shot blocking. Yeah.
I think that's fair.
It's either that or his finishing ability with the lobs.
And he still has some Paul Reed in him as far as foul issues. He's going to be a guy that we have to navigate those waters. He fouls a lot, which I don't mind in a backup center in general. Like if you're going to play at max, like 15 to 20 minutes, you want to use all 5 fouls in that. I don't have an issue with it, but that's obviously an issue that we had to face with Paul Reed. So expect a little of the same here.
That never bothered me with Paul Reed, the fouls. You have them. You're only playing 12, 15 minutes a game. Use them. But I also, you can put the other team in foul trouble and then they get to shoot.
Not all fouls are equal. Like if you're just going up trying to block a shot and you foul a guy at the rim, I'm never going to complain about that. If you're just Dwight Howard pushing guys from 30 feet from the basket, then it's kind of a different conversation here, or a legal screen, which are very frustrating. There are bad fouls you can have, but in general, agree with your premise there.
Yeah. All right, last 2 guys here. These are the last 2. So Jeff Dowden Jr. is on a 2-way, and then these last 2 guys are also on 2-way contracts. Justin Edwards, I was super happy. I think it was on draft night that they took him, right? Or maybe it was the day after.
Yeah, it was an undrafted signing immediately following the draft.
Yeah, big Justin Edwards fan. I thought that was a great signing. I hope he sticks around for a while, and even if he doesn't, I think he definitely has a long NBA career ahead. Good size, pretty good defender overall, I would say. I really like the way he plays. He's another guy that's like all grit.
Yeah. I mean, That it's interesting. Like he's a guy who's had a unique archetype that he was one of the top 5 recruits, top 3 recruits in the country coming out of the Philadelphia area here. Went to Kentucky and kind of got outshined by the Rob Dillinghams, the Reed Shepherds of the world that obviously ended up way higher on the draft boards there. He's got the archetype of what you're looking for in a true wing, a little bit smaller than you would like as far as his frame as a whole, but a guy who seems to get it defensively and is finding that's his niche. I had a chance to interview him a little bit too. A really nice kid, really a guy that seems ready to work. And I was impressed with his answers defensively, what he talked to me about, that it does feel like he's buying that as his lane to impact winning. I do hope that's the case, but ultimately, as far as expectations, I think he's a guy who is going to benefit from having the entirety of the season in the G League. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think that's what the plan should be for this year.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think of Justin Edwards, Mitch? You know a lot about him?
Yeah, I got one word: promise. This guy's got so much promise and such a high ceiling. I can't wait to see him in like a couple years. I can't wait. I love the move. Love the pick.
I wouldn't say he stood out in the summer league though, which I was
No.
expecting him to stand out in the summer league, and I don't really feel like he didn't.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I can see the idea of what he can be is what was optimistic to me. It is like that wing type player who is defense first. Think he cuts pretty well. Think he's got some physicality to him. You can squint and see it, but he's a ways away. So as much as like, to be perfectly honest, I think the recruiting ratings, I got a chance to watch him once in high school and I thought it felt a little bit strong then. I definitely feel that way now that that's how things have played out, but not a guy that I think you should be giving up on. And I do think that like in the long run, this is a good investment from the team.
Yeah, no, I agree with Mitch. Promise is the key word you want to use with Justin Edwards. I agree, Jerry. He definitely does need a lot of work, but I think he's going to put the work in, and I think he can carve himself into a nice NBA player. I really do. And then the last guy here, before we talk a little bit about the NBA Cup, is Lester Quinones. Did I pronounce that correct?
I've heard it a couple different ways. It works for
I
me.
heard it a couple different ways. I think of Canones.
Yeah, Quinones, I've heard. Quinones, whatever you want to. What all works
Yeah.
for me.
Played for the Golden State Warriors and what do they go by? They're the G League team, the Warriors G League team.
Is it Santa something Cruz? Some Cruz?
Santa Cruz Warriors, maybe?
Santa Clara Crew? I don't know. Something like that.
Yeah, I know it's the South Bay Lakers. I always get those mixed up.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know that much about
Santa
this
Cruz
guy.
Warriors. There we go.
Santa Cruz Warriors. Okay. Yeah, I honestly don't know much about this guy. Do you, Sean?
Yeah, the dude's he's got a Philly chip on his shoulder. I'll say that. But there's some nastiness to him in the way that he plays. Was a fun player in college. Is a guy that like I think is a good choice. It's a good pickup by the Sixers. I think he provides far more promise than who those two ways were initially slotted for. They've kind of made a couple of swaps here. He's more of a guard type archetype. He also really bought into like that Golden State system of the constant motion, the flying around screens. There's a lot going on. I think like that can benefit and hurt guys in a way that I think like you look at Jordan Poole as an example from the downside here is like he has not really found his stride since leaving Golden State. And he was a guy who struggled when he first got there too. I'm very intrigued by what Quinones looks like in another system here, but he's got the talent, pretty good shooter. And again, like the number one thing that stood out to me every time I've watched him is there is a nastiness to him that he's a get in your face. He'll like push up on you, be physical, those type of things. So I think he'll be well liked here in Philadelphia.
That's a guy who I can see get an opportunity at some point in the regular season. I just see him playing. He'll probably spend a lot of time with Delaware.
Yeah, more so than Edwards, I think, definitely.
Yeah, I see him doing. I see him standing out in Delaware, and I can 100% see him getting pulled up at some point. Mitch, do you have any thoughts on this guy?
Just the jump shot, man. I really like the jump shot. I like his streakiness. He's gonna be good if he gets his number called.
Yeah,
So,
no,
I like it.
Agree. All right,
like
so real quick, two more. We'll make this pretty quick because we've already gone pretty long. So the NBA Cup, the group that the Sixers are in include the Sixers, the Charlotte Hornets, the Brooklyn Nets, the Orlando Magic, and the New York Knicks. So how are we feeling about the NBA Cup in terms of the teams that we got to go up against?
Yeah, I guess it depends on how hard they want to go for it. My honest thoughts is I probably don't expect these to be must-play Joel Embiid games, that I think they'll probably treat it as any other regular season game. I mean, overall, I'm not riding or dying with what the results of the cup are. That I'm much more keen on the actual trophy here. But there's not a team in that list that scares me by any means. And I think if the Sixers do put the pedal to the metal, that they could win it if they want to. It does feel a little bit like a try hard midseason award that feels made for the New York Knicks here. But we'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah, definitely not afraid of the Nets. Definitely not afraid of the Hornets. The Magic, I think
they're good.
Yeah, I think they're underrated. I think KCP was a great addition for them. I really wanted KCP, but like that one hurts looking back. But I would say the Magic.
Paul George, man, it's okay.
What's up?
So we got Paul George, man. It's okay.
Yeah. We're fine, dude. We're fine.
But I would say, the Magic. Not that they scare me, but I could see them. Like if Embiid doesn't play, I could see the Magic beating us.
Yeah, I think that's true.
When it comes to the Magic,
and then the New York Knicks absolutely terrify me.
When it comes to the Magic, though, there's this one player that it comes down to. I'm not talking about Banchero. I'm talking about Franz Wagner. That guy's offensive game has gone up tremendously since he played at Michigan a couple years ago, him and his brother. So I think he's the X factor going forward. People are going to forget about him. He could make a strong case. Nick, we were talking about most improved player. He could make a strong case for that.
Yeah, he had a weird shooting outlier last year. He shot like 27% from three, which is really strange and out of character for him. If he returns to kind of like that league average 35% or somewhere in that vicinity, he's a completely different player. But he is a guy who I was kind of, I guess, disappointed in taking a step back last year. Definitely a guy that's been on my list of favorite players to watch play. I like Franz quite a bit. So agree with the shout. I'm curious to see what he looks like this year, but I will have my eyes all over what that 3-point number is looking like.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Overall, I would say if we're able to dodge the Knicks somehow, I think the Sixers can absolutely win or at least escape their group and find their way to Vegas, which would be super cool. I think even if Embiid doesn't play, I think Maxey alone, I could just picture it now like a Tyrese Maxey masterclass, 40 points and advancing us to go to Vegas. That'd be awesome.
We got to stop being afraid of this Knicks team, Nick. We got to stop that
now.
Mitch, how do you feel about the Knicks right now?
I'm okay with the Knicks, but I was thinking about this earlier a couple days ago. The thing with the Knicks, it comes down to Dante DiVincenzo and what he could bring. Now he just went off. He just went off for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Like he shot lights out. But I'm a huge fan of Karl Anthony Towns. I like the move that they made. Unexpected, but I did like it because of Mitchell Robinson. You know, he's going to be out. And then once he comes back, they'll move Cat to the 4. So I'm okay with the Knicks right now. It's like neck and neck for me. It's like neck and neck.
Yeah, I'd probably still put the Celtics at the top, but I think Celtics and Knicks, or Knicks and Sixers, it's tough, man. I probably lean Knicks, but I definitely do agree because there were nights where Dante DiVincenzo was like the best player for the Knicks, or the second best player, at least, in that series when we played them.
I just think the Knicks have gotten a whole lot of credit for winning a grand total of 1 playoff series in the past 20 years. Like the kind of talk about how they're this up and coming team that's ready to take the title, I feel like is overstated. They're a good basketball team. Yes. They'll be in the mix. Yes. They'll be a good regular season team, but I just question if that's sustainable from a Jalen Brunson standpoint of how much is on his plate and how much he's going to be asked to do. I don't think Mikal Bridges is quite as good as his reputation is. I think we saw a lot of regression from him last year. Yes, he'll be in a different role, which will help. OG Anunoby has far worse injury issues than a guy like Joel Embiid when you throw that in the conversation. And Karl Anthony Towns, if you want to throw him as the primary defender on Joel Embiid, then sign us up for 75 points for Joel Embiid if that's going to be
right
there. So I get why they swung for the fences with the Cat trade because I questioned their top end talent. To me, that was the biggest flaw, that I didn't think they had it compared to teams like the Celtics and Sixers. When you kind of speak about the matchup standpoint, Karl Anthony Towns is everything that they haven't been as a team. And I do question how that fits into like how this all works. So I need to see it from this Knicks team before I'm believing the hype.
Yeah. And then to add on to that, DiVincenzo did not like his role with the New York Knicks, so he asked to actually be traded. So he went to Minnesota. They had to get rid of Cat because of salary issues. I mean, look at the extensions for Anthony Edwards, extensions for who's the other guy, Naz Reid, so on and so forth. Like Rudy
Gobert.
Gobert, the 5 first-round picks. I mean, they backed themselves into the corner. They had to make that trade. So, all in all, I'm okay with it. Give me Joel Embiid and Cat. One-on-one, I'm good.
Yeah, I would probably take Embiid in that matchup, although I do think Cat is going to do wonders for that Knicks offense. I don't think as much is going to be dependent on Jalen Brunson for them to create offense, because I definitely agree at times it was a lot of give Jalen the rock and go get a bucket, and they didn't, and they looked a little lost.
And by the way, I don't think they solved that.
Give you that.
I don't think they solved that. Like, I don't think Karl Anthony Towns is a go get a bucket guy. He can catch and shoot, knock down threes, and is a talented offensive player. But Brunson's still the only guy I consider a real deal creator on that team. Bridges is not a guy that I think can take guys off the dribble, create for himself or others. OG Anunoby, certainly not there. Like, DiVincenzo was really the secondary guy, unless you're banking on a huge Deuce McBride.
Yeah,
which
Deuce
could happen.
McBride could take a leap.
Could happen. I like Deuce. He's honestly my favorite player on that entire Knicks team there. So I'm not like ruling it out, but I just think like there's a lot of good faith being put into this Knicks team that like I think we've put a little bit too much praise than there should be for what we've seen thus far.
It's the rebounding, man. I don't know. We'll see. We shall see. Again, Embiid's not going to go after the MVP or anything like that this year. I think he's going to play more of a defensive role, and I like where his head's at. Everything that I've seen and read with Embiid lately, I think he's in the perfect state of mind, and he's all in on this team, and he's ready to win.
Yeah.
As for the seedings, I would probably, in terms of the regular season, I would say the Sixers are the third best team in the East, in my opinion. I would go Celtics, Knicks, then Sixers. But in terms of seeding, I'd probably put the Sixers maybe fourth or fifth. I could see the Pacers or the Magic having a better regular season record because of the fact that Embiid's going to sit out a decent amount of games. How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, to me, it's just avoid the play-in and then brace for war come playoff time. That I'm honestly not too caught up in the playoff seeding. We've done the dance where we've scripted our pathway through where it's we just got to beat the Hawks or we just got to play this team. The reality is you got to be ready to beat everyone, and that's what I expect from this team. So this regular season is going to be about learning how to play with each other, everyone getting on the same page, and making sure that everyone is healthy. So I'm not overly caught up in seeding. I think the Sixers are the second best team in the East. I think it goes Celtics, Sixers, Knicks, Bucks is kind of my breakdown there. But we could have a Magic or a Cavs sneak into the mix there as well. Sixers are absolutely going to be a top 6 seed, and I'm not really too caught up in where they fall in that.
Yeah, and I really like the Cavs, especially what they have done. Evan Mobley, I think he's going to be like an all-star this year. I think he's going to take a credible leap. There's another player for most improved. So Evan Mobley, I like. They kept Donovan Mitchell. They kept Darius Garland. So I really like what they did here. Cedi Osman, Jared Allen. I really like what they did. So I could see the Cavs taking a leap. I could see that. But for me, I got 1, Celtics 2, Knicks, us 3, and I got the Bucks 4. Even though Damian Lillard's got a huge chip on his shoulder too, especially how everything has happened. And you look at what Giannis said on Media Day, he didn't even work out with Dame. So that makes you think, oh, could they push him back a little bit in the standings? So, yeah, a lot of stuff has to go to Sixers
about
way.
The Bucks. I got to be honest. Right. Yeah, I feel like they're – and Doc Rivers said that because I was watching their preseason game the other night, and they had him I think it was in between the first and the second quarter. They brought him aside, and Doc was like, "People aren't talking about us, but we like that."
Yeah,
he's not wrong. I think a lot. I think it's been mostly Celtics, Knicks, Sixers talk. I would even maybe put the Pacers above the Bucks in terms of national media.
Yeah, we'll see how it all shakes out there. Ultimately, like, I think it's a blessing and a curse to be under the microscope and not be. I think the Sixers are going to be a team that feels a little bit of the heat from that this year, more so than past years. We see a lot more national games with Paul George, things like that. So we'll see how it all shakes out. Ultimately, it's about each of these teams clicking individually, and the Sixers are the forefront of that list as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else you want to add real quick, Mitch, before we wrap up?
I just saw this on Twitter. Gilbert Arenas says that Joel Embiid is probably the best player in the NBA, and that the NBA 66 game rule has prevented his accolades in stacking up against Jokic. Embiid has beat this man's ass, so basically he's a fan of Embiid, so that's nice to hear. He actually has a good take for once.
I know, a rare Gilbert Arenas correct take there.
Yeah.
I agree with Jerry in the chat as well. Definitely not. We got Austin O'Neill here. I'm gonna pull that up next. Yeah, I definitely agree with Jerry. I would take Nick Nurse in a playoff series over Doc Rivers probably every day of the week.
Yeah.
My girlfriend and I are the biggest Shawnee Saint or Street Barnard fans. Thanks for keeping us up to date with all things Sixers. All right.
Nice. Appreciate it.
All right.
There you go. All right. So, Sean, where can everybody find your work?
Yeah, you guys can follow me on Twitter at Sean_Bernard1. You can hear me on Fox Sports The Gambler in Philadelphia. We'll be having Saturday 11 to 1 on with Mark Henry Jr. as well as throughout the week. That'll be ramping up now that basketball season is back again. You can also check out Sixers Digest and Phillies Digest. Just dropped my rant after that Phillies exit that is out already. We'd record another one with Luke Arcaney after this, and plenty of Sixers content coming out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. As for me, I would obviously love to hop back on here again at some point. I usually do mostly graphics on here, but it was cool to hop on with Mitch for a stream finally. We've been talking about doing it for a while, so this was super great. Yeah, man. Very excited for the Sixers season. We shall see what happens, but I'm ready to get the ball rolling. What are we, about a week and a half, 2 weeks away from the season opener?
2 weeks.
Yeah, I think 13 days officially.
13 days?
Yeah, against the Bucks.
Against the Bucks, yeah.
Always.
Doc Rivers. Is it in Philly?
I honestly don't know.
I think it is. I get it.
I was going to say, is Doc Rivers coming back to town?
Oh my God! If he had signed me up, I want to go to that one.
You don't want to? You didn't want to see them play the New Zealand Breakers?
Nah, man. Home. We're home.
Okay.
All right.
We're home Wednesday the 23rd. So,
sounds good.
A lot of preseason left.
Yeah, they got Timberwolves, and then they got Brooklyn are the next two, right?
We got Timberwolves, Boston, Atlanta, Brooklyn, Orlando. That's the next 5. So that's it. And then we got the regular season.
Okay, cool. You got tickets to opening night, Sixers Bucks. That's awesome, man.
Oh,
all right,
shit.
so Mitch, where can we find you, man?
So basically, you can follow me on Twitter at Mitch Kofsky, YouTube Mitch Kofsky, and the co-founder of Hardcore Sports Network. That's basically where I am at.
All right, sounds good. Anything else you guys want to add, or we are all set to wrap up?
All good.
I think we're all good, man.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and go Sixers.
Sir.
Yep. See you guys.